Fine. So where were we? Whew.
You were going to answer my question.
That's really where we were? You had a question 2 weeks ago that you remember. Wow, that's a very unusual human being. You can't remember what it was, though. Right.
It's like,
Knowing there was something coming to me is something we remember. Needing to know what that is.
I think I do remember.
You do remember? What was your question? From
Something like, does this method that you're describing work when you don't have any kavanah and you want to use the words to... Something like that. Like,
It sounds like you don't remember exactly what it was. But close.
You want to, by saying the words, bring the kavanah back to you.
By saying the words, you want to bring the kavanah back to you.
You don't have any kavanah, so can you say the words in some
When you
way?
don't have any kavanah, well, obviously,
And you said there's a method that Rabbi Nachman...
that's what we're talking about now. So we're going to talk about these things tonight. So let's just take a moment to focus our minds and our hearts. I keep thinking everyone's done elevations. I'm like, okay, let's begin with Yeshiva Das, and then we'll go to Devekas, and then okay. So if you've done Hamevin Yavin, if you're holding, you need to do what you know. It's a big klal, principle in Avoda. Whatever you're up to, whatever you know. You're learning Yechudim, if you're learning Kabbalah, and there's certain names of Hashem, but you don't know the whole system. The klal is, the principle is, Kabbalah's bring down, you do what you know. You can ask yourself, why am I here? What is it I hope to achieve? What does I hope to gain? Externally, internally. You pray. We're creating the space together. You're the mysterious nefesh of coming. We've created the space together. Your will affects my speech. That's the power of everything we're learning. My will affects your heart. That's the role that we play when we enter into a teaching, learning space, a mashpia, makabel space, a tzov, a space, a teacher and student space. Thank you, it helps. So, this is the fourth. Hands up if you've been to one of the classes before this one so far. Hands up if this is the first one you've been to so far. Okay. So we'll catch up a bit and then we'll go weiter, further together. Again, this is supposed to be a source-based class. I'm reading out of all the Makoros. You see piles of these things with bookmarks in front of me. Our photocopy is still broken. Hopefully I'll be a bit bored in this week. It hasn't happened for the last 40 years, but if I am, we'll buy another one, and next week we'll have some of the Makoros in your hands. Listen to this. This is a nice little Torah, almost on the side, going back to something we were talking about in the first session together. This is brought down from the Or HaMa'ir. Shemati b'shem Baal Shem Tov. Pam achad sha'al l'chacham hador me'inyan hatefillah heich ata noheg v'la'an poiner b'machshavasecha b'sha'as hatefillah. Now you take this Torah however you want to receive it. The Baal Shem Tov met with the Chacham Hador. From the context of the question, sounds like the Chacham Hador at that time was not Chassidic or not yet Chassidic. I'm not sure who it was, but this is the Mesorah. And the Baal Shem Tov asked him on the subject of prayer, how do you behave in prayer? Heich atan noiheg, v'la'an poiner, and where does your mind turn to at the time you're praying? What are you focusing on? What is your kavanah? Obviously, he knows he's focusing on the Shemona Ezra, he's focusing on the words. That doesn't need to be asked, but one of the deeper thing. One of my favorite things to do, it takes a little chutzpah. I finally found one or two Yidden that have done this before me for many years, which gave me the chutzpah to do, is when you meet big people, ask them chutzpahdik questions. Let me clarify that. I don't mean ask them chutzpahdik questions. Ask them questions about what they're doing. There's the tzaddik we went to for a bracha one time, and his eyes rolled back in his head when he began to give us a bracha, and he said the bracha, and I didn't even say amen. I said, can I ask, what was the tzaddik doing when we was rolling? I'm interested, like, what were you doing? And he smiled with such chen. He was like, people don't usually ask that. I said, people aren't as nebuch as me. They're not as, But he was almost intrigued to try and give it over. He couldn't give over very much because what they're doing is very, very deep. But the Baal Shem Tov would do this. Oivdim do this. You meet with the tzaddik and you say, I want to know what you're doing. So the Baal Shem Tov meets with the Chacham Ador and says, what are you doing with your mind? Now, this is stuff, if you've heard some elevation stuff, we talk about this weird stuff some of the time. I can't remember if I mentioned, we discussed this a little maybe in the first class, and there's very profound teachings on this. In elevation, we do the Commander's meditation on this. When you're learning about Nishmas Kol Chai, it's all about these inyanim. So the Chacham Ador responds to the Baal Shem Tov, Ani makasha etz atzmi im kol pratei hachiyas shebenivriim. Uvachol davar haba lechlal habriya tzurich liyos sham chiyas mishefer ha'eloki. Ani makasha etz atzmi imahem lahoitzi dibor lifnei elokim. What does the Chacham Ador do when he's praying? I don't know if this sounds weird to you, but I want you to know, this is all for Chassidus, it's plenty of times in Kabbalah. I connect myself with the consciousness, the energy, the divine spark within all the physical beings in the world. This is how they begin the process of prayer. The command as a meditation, we do an elevation, I think we do an elevation 3, where he says before a person goes to pray, first you're machaven your consciousness, you align your consciousness, you fix your intent in order to the doimim sameach chai medaba and then Yisrael. First you think of all the doimim, all the physical innate matter in all of the world, and you think about it, all the stones, all the rocks, all the water, and you go through it all and you feel the energy of it. And then you go to the Sameach, you think of all the plants, all the gorgeous plants and flowers. Whenever I went into Uman one time with my Bechor, my son, and we came back and there were these, what are they, yellow, are they daffodils? What are they called? These fields and fields. I'm doing like tens and tens of miles of just endless fields of them. And you fix your intent and everything that's grown, all the forests you've seen, all the nature you've come into contact with, and you think about it, and there's a way to do this, techniques you can learn, and you connect to it, and you get tremendous energy. As we learn from the Quran, to Kunei Zohar, I believe, when Hashem says, Nasei Adam, let us make man, everyone knows the Rashi, everyone knows the debate. Who is Hashem saying, let us make man? It sounds like a because Hashem wasn't the only person that made Adam, so he needed a partnership. Is there somebody else, Chas v'Chalil, another God, Chas v'Chalil, God forbid, right? Who was it? So the Holy Zohar teaches us that he turned to all of creation. And he said, everything in creation, I need a chelik of you, a part of you, to be included in the human consciousness. To the rocks, there's an aspect of rock. That's what it means that the world is an olam gadol and a human is an olam katan. The world is a big universe, and a human being is a small universe, a small consciousness. And the Midrash says, like there's a sun and the moon, there's a sun and moon within. And like there's mountains within. Like there's sea and land, there's sea and land within. And you can know that. And more than that, this is all nishmas kol chai. That the sky, that the sun and the moon, that like the arms, wings of eagles, everything we're including is we're putting our consciousness in all of matter, and we're connecting to it, and we get an energy from it, and we're included. This is what Rav Nachman means when he says that we're supposed to go out to the field to pray. Even if you're a man and you're obligated to daven in a minyan, so you should know there's times when the Tzaddikim said, nevertheless, it's okay to go out. And you pray in the fields, or according to the Shita, you do his bodhidus in the fields, and you talk to Hashem. Rav Nachman says the most beautiful Torahs. He says that the plants in the field and the grasses in the field, they sing with you and they pray with you, and their energy comes into your prayer and elevates your prayer. To the tzaddik, to the Chacham Ador says the Baal Shem Tov, Ani mekash etzmi im kol prati achiyas shenevuyim. I connect myself first with all the energy, all the detailed energy, all the consciousness, all the divinity, all the spark, in all the levels of all of the creatures in creation, of V'chol davar habala klal bria tzarich lios, because everything that's considered a creation, a detail in the creation, whether it's, what do we call domain, somer, domain means inanimate object, somer means plant life, chai, every animal, gibor ka'ari, ratz katzvi, because the power of the tzvi can let you run. The power of the lion within you gives you energy. And if you connect to that, this is the deep secrets we can't go into now about the Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel in last week's Pasha. The sin of the golden calf. You know, what kind of idiot would bow down to a cow hours after experiencing Hashem? Forget about one of the greatest generations that ever lived, the Dor Adea, the door of Das, of consciousness that knew Hashem. What kind of generation would in hours? What's the explanation? Because they stood before Hashem and they saw Tachas Kisei covered. They saw the Makava, and on the Makava, on this image of God, where God comes into contact reality, there's 4 creatures. And one of them is a cow. Because Hashem is channeling his transcendent consciousness down through the physical world, and that comes down into the Kisei covered. And in that, then there's 4 faces of different animals, of different aspects of the animal world, of the animal kingdom. And man is one of them, but there's others. But that's, when they experience that, what they're experiencing is the transcendence, which is piercing through into the physical world to all the dimensions of animal life, of the physical reality. But when they experience it above what they saw, is that the physical elements, the root souls of the animal world, but they saw the infinite light shining through it. So the animal experience was part of the reality that Hashem's light shines into, but they saw the spark, the divinity within it, so all of the physical world and all of the animal world and all the animal self, the Nefesh Bahamas, was really radiating with divinity. But when they lost that spiritual consciousness, then they said, oh, we saw an egel, oh, we saw a cow. But they lost the spirituality within it. That's a deeper remez, a deeper secret. For when a person's in a higher state, they can use their animal self to express spirituality, to express divinity. They can channel the animal desires in a way that the animal desires is a makava, is a chariot, is a vessel, is a tzinor, is a kli. You can channel your animal desire to reveal spirituality. But when you fall from that place, that devekus, the moichenim is mistalik, then what happens, you try and use your animal self, and God forbid the animal self takes you down. So they got the animal stuff, but they lost the spiritual stuff. Is this making sense to anyone? Am I going a little too far, too deep, too fast? This is the Zohar. I have to see the Zohar in last week's parsha. It's too much to go into now. But they came into contact with Elokim. And the Zohar says, Elokim, we all know the famous Torah, is me and Elah. The Oisi is me and Elah. Mi bara Elah, says the Pasuk. Se'u meiram einechem, you lift up your eyes above and you say, who created these? Who created these? What does it mean, who created these? There's 2 aspects of the world. There's the immanence of God and the transcendence of God. The immanence means these. What does these mean? These is always Zeh Hashem, is something physical, tangible. This, that the physical world, the physical water, the physical desire, the money, the television, the tree, the physical world. And me is a question. Who? What is the source? What is the transcendence? From where does it emanate? Me is the transcendent aspect. When I say who, it's something beyond what my mind can fathom. It's deeper than my intellect. It's ad de lo yada. It's beyond what it's me. I can't grasp it. It's ma. It's what. What is the question? Koyach ma. That's an aspect of Chachma, the transcendent world to which the details come from. That means they saw the animal in the Kisei covered. They saw the face of the animal, the face of the shore, the face of the ox. They saw all the dimensions of that. But they saw that in every physical element, there was a transcendent divinity shining through it. Me, bara Ela, there was the me and then the Ela were together. The Ela, the physical world, the me had transcendence within it. But the Zohar says what happened to them, why they committed the sin, was that they lost the me, they lost the transcendent, they were left with the immanent, just the Ela. So there's a way to connect your consciousness to all the physical elements in the world. And the tzaddikim, and all of us, when we say Nishmas Kol Chai, it gives you a power, it gives you an energy, it comes into you. I remember one time in my life, a long, long time ago, a past life in the same body. I was just becoming frum, and I was hanging out in a city called Tzfat. Have you ever heard of it? And I was talking with this chevra, and there's one girl, forgive me for saying this, who was a tree-hugging hippie. Can I say that? Russian tree-hugging hippie. Now, I don't mean that as a derogatory tree-hugging. She was actually a tree-hugging hippie. That was her thing. That was her avodas hakodesh. Her life was dedication to she wanted to hug trees. And the debate was always, why do you need all these mitzvahs? I get that experience from just hugging a tree. So I'm not derogatorily calling her a tree-hugging hippie. I mean, she was a tree-hugging hippie. That was, we daven chakras, she goes up to the first, a whole thing for her. And I remember we're debating Torah, not Torah, mitzvahs, not mitzvahs, Hashem, not mitzvahs. She said, it's all in the tree, I don't need God, I don't need Torah. And finally it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, we'd all been debating all night, and I remember the words came out of my mouth. And I remember I couldn't hold back anymore, and I kind of screamed it, half jokingly and half deadly seriously. I said, when you're hugging the tree, pardon my French, what the heck do you think you're hugging? Is it the bark? Is it the sap? What is that thing? Shh. What is that thing that you feel? Is it sap you feel? Is it bark you feel? And she just had this look on her face, and she burst out crying and crying and crying. She knows better than we know. These people know how to connect their consciousness with the divinity of the tree. The avodah zarah is they think it ends in the tree. They think it's in the tree and not in the water. They think it's in the water, but not in the cat. They think it's the cat and chas v'chilul not in the tefillin and not in the Shabbos and not in the tzitzis and not in the mezuzah and not in Lashon HaKodesh and not in the tzedikei emes and not. They think it's not there. But the fact that she senses it somewhere, it really is in a tree. But Nachman is saying you can really feel it in the tree. And Chazal, and in the Gemara, one of the Madregas of the Tzaddikim that they talked about in the Gemara, it's a Peladika thing, one of the Madregas of the Tzaddikim is they could talk to trees. There are people that do this today. These are techniques you can learn this from, discuss them. I'm a little distracted right now. Listen very carefully. What does he do? The Chacham Ador, the Baal Shem Tov says, what do you do in Tefillah? Remember that conversation? He says, what do? He says, I connect to all the animals and all the creation and all the details. They all have a spark of divinity. And I connect to them with my consciousness. The techniques you can learn how to do is Kalalis Ves Kashrus, it's called. Makasha etzmi im kol prate achias b'nivrayim of a chol davar habala klal briet tzarich liyoy sham chias meshefel. Everything that exists in reality, it needs to have a soul. It needs to have a spiritual energy, an aspect of consciousness, if you will, according to its level. And ni makasha etzmi imahem lahoitzi diba livnei elakim. And I connect myself to them to draw out consciousness, to invest in speech, to bring that up to Hashem. Lahamik she'ela lamala lamala. And I draw down from that deep place and I lift up the word and the speech and the prayer higher and higher. The Baal Shem Tov says, you really do that? And he says, yes. Amaloi says, the Baal Shem Tov, im kain atam machriv esa oilam. You are physically destroying the world. Kivin she'ata moishech mehem chiyasam lahaloisoi lagbia lamala nisharim prate hanevriim beli chiyasam. Because you are drawing out the energy to raise you above, you are leaving all the creatures without a soul or without an energy, and you actually destroy them. V'heshiv lo, the Chacham Ador turns around to the Baal Shem Tov and says, V'ki efshe she'ani yachol bebechinis his kasher shali limshoich mehem chiyasam lamala. I added a little modern chutzpah. Is it really possible, he turns to the Baal Shem Tov, that me, with my little connection to them, that I can draw the chiyas out of them? Yeah, really? He says to the Baal Shem Tov. And I love this. Amalai says the Baal Shem Tov to him, Im Kain, if that's actually a question for you, Im Kain lefi devarecha hatoyelis b'tifilasecha hu ma'at b'kamas, then your tefillah is not really doing anything at all. If you don't realize that that is the power that you have, that is the power a Chacham has, and that is the power Tzaddik has, and that is va'amech kulam tzaddikim, according to our level, you don't realize that your conscious intent and fixed on any creature affects its capacity, its energy flow, its consciousness. If you don't believe that, then what do you think you're doing with prayer? When you're praying for someone to get better, you don't think that's bringing consciousness to them? If, God forbid, you think negative things, Lashon Hara, Ayin Hara, Lashon Hara, what's Ayin Hara? God forbid a person thinks negative about someone else, you cut off their influx of energy, their shefa. You don't get that? The Baal Shem Tov says, what do you think prayer is? Your prayer's obviously not worth very much if you don't realize that's what it means to be a Yid. That's what we're all doing in the world. Kiven shaloh amanta ki tedaber sheyesh la'el yadech la'alois mehem bebechinas chirasam amnam ha'emes kain hu. Your prayer is not worth anything, basically, because you don't believe that the power of the words that you have and the thoughts that you have is that you're able to lift energy out of something. Well, the truth is you do. Ha'emes is that you do. Rav Nachman Reish Pei Beis, we spoke about this. That when you see a Rashi, you see a person stuck in very difficult state, very difficult consciousness, and you see good in them, and you care for them, and you find one aspect of good with them, in truth, you turn them to a tzaddik. You don't believe that works, so don't pray. That's not halachic psak, by the way. Just speaking out, being dramatic with the ideas we're learning. Trying to make an impression. HaChachamim HaMitiyim, the Or HaMa'ir goes on to say, the true great ones, the true wise ones, Asher koyach behem la'amoy b'heichel HaMelech datzalasa. That's what prayer is. You're standing in the Heichel HaMelech, in the higher consciousness, in the higher world. Hachiv mutal l'kasha atzmi ba'oifen hanal. And then he goes on to say, and here's the punchline, you do have to do what Chacham did. Then he says this idea, not for today, but it has to be done in a certain way. You're not lifting the chiyas out of it, God forbid. You're channeling chiyas down, you're elevating and receiving, but you have to make sure that the chiyas is flowing. You're not extracting, God forbid. The depth of the inyan. This is just an introduction after a few weeks off to get us back into the spirit of things. You have the power with your consciousness to invest chiyas into something, energy, consciousness, soul, shefa, and to remove it out of that. And everything that it means to be yin in this world, to be shomer Torah and mitzvahs, is really just about that. Everything we do, we put tefillin on, we say a blessing. Everything we do, while we're saying a blessing, the mystics say when you say a blessing on the food before you eat it, you're drawing shefa and energy into that food, empowering the soul of it so that when you consume it, you're more likely to be able to connect to the energized soul within it, the energetic field within it, to allow that to feed you, rather than not empowering its energy and then for more, when you consume it, being more likely to be taken down by the physical desiredness of it, if you will. All of prayer is that. When we learn Torah, if we're connecting to the words, we're drawing Hashem's, everything we're learning about, we're drawing Hashem's divine consciousness into all of creation. This actually is the essence of Judaism, and very much so Primal Chassidus, what we're teaching. The Primal Chassidim, the original, the Chassidim Rishonim, as I call them, this is what they're all talking about the whole time. So we began to, by exploring, where do we see this in In the classroom, for example, that's what we've been speaking about for a couple of weeks now. That a classroom is a conscious entity, a conscious being, a combined consciousness, and our mind and our place where our hearts is at this time. This is affecting us, absolutely. Quick moment for questions. Sarah, yes?
Maybe two things. What you said, so if it's really a good thing to connect to the energy and everything,
Yes.
and it doesn't destroy, so why did the Baal Shem Tov say that?
Well, he
destroying
says
the
don't
world?
extract the energy. You're not trying to put the energy in and then lift that energy up from that creature, from that plant life, from that forest up to Hashem. Don't do that, because then you're leaving without conscious. But
So
to
he was saying
connect to it,
the way he said it wasn't the way that he should be doing it.
yes,
should
he
do it a
says,
different way.
right. You have to be doing it in a way that you get energy from that, but you also channel any energy to that. That's a very brief thing, that you want to bring blessing to the whole of the world. That includes Goyim as well, non-Jews as well. All
Or
the
the
Goyim. To put it bluntly, when we are not caring, when we are not shining energy, when we are not nurturing, when we are not sharing the burden of human existence, they cannot draw energy from us, and therefore they take energy from negative places. We are the teachers. We are supposed to care. We are supposed to channel energy to the whole of the world. There's many Torah sources that discuss that in depth. Maybe we've forgotten that a little in this generation. We've been in fight and flight mode. But it's part of our responsibility. Any other questions, what we've said so far? Yes, ma'am.
The decision to do that is that all it takes?
Is what all it takes.
Meaning the difference of what?
The decision to do it is not all it takes. It's a degree of mastery of consciousness. It's not just a decision, but decision's a good place. How focused is your mind? How fixed is your intent? How clear is your consciousness? How miyashiv is your das? Do you know how to use your das elyon? Do you know how to fix your intent and hold it and draw in from a higher place? But everyone according to their level. Everyone according to a level. It's tzaddik to look at a person and fix their consciousness and see good can actually psychologically transform the person for the rest of their life in that moment. A good psychologist, a good therapist knows when they're caring, when they're compassionate, when they're focused, when they're loving in that place. And there's a resonant bonding, there's a connection, that it seems to speed up the process, open up the person more. There was a psychologist I was dealing with at one time, it's a student, and the student told me that the psychologist during the session, that he's doing a certain technique, is checking his cell phone a lot. He's playing on his phone the whole time. So I spoke to the person, I know this person well, he's a very nice guy. Very nice guy. I said, why? She said it's a little distracting for her. He said, it doesn't affect the process. I'm holding on a stage, he's doing something. And he gave me an explanation why, according to the technique, it doesn't affect the process. I said, if you really, really think that the process is at all, that is making the difference, I said, that's over avodah zara. That's avodah zara. You're putting your faith in the technique. There's wonderful techniques, and his technique is a very, very good and powerful technique. But the base of the technique is the transmission of something deeper. And you need a full attention there. One of the things we can put our consciousness into is words themselves. The words that we speak can be invested in consciousness. That's what we spoke about last week. They can be invested in consciousness. And the consciousness can have more of an effect than the words that you speak. But ultimately, the package deal of the perfect word with the perfect intent, with the soul connection from the pure and caring mind is infinitely more powerful. That's called Tikkun Lashon HaKodesh. The true Lashon HaKodesh, as we brought down last week, I mentioned with Moshe Shapiro, Shlita, Zatzal, Shem Yirachem. Takes a while to process that turnaround. Said this idea of Lashon HaKodesh, the true Lashon HaKodesh. Shleimus Lashon HaKodesh, as Rav Nachman likes to call it. is the idea that it's not just another language, it's when the person spoke it, even if you don't understand the language, you instantly had full awareness and knowledge of the information that was being said. What was in that person's head and heart directly went into your head and heart. It's not just a technical language that you learn. So we talked about what it means when a true teacher comes to a class, and the Mesiras Nefesh that the class comes together, people actually attend, and we're all there together. And we talked about there has to be the davening before, the Mishpir is supposed to daven, the Makablim is supposed to daven, we're supposed to pray, and the teacher is supposed to enter a state of Devekus. And then from the state of Devekus, they connect. Remember that the Gezerah Shava, you connect to the consciousness of the group and you lift them up to Devekus. And we talked about the Gezerah Shava, you have to find something in common with the group, with the individual, something you care about, you like about them. You resonate on the same level, that love, that connection creates a resonance, so you've lifted them up. His chabris lahaloiso, you connect to them, you lift them all up, and you find the point of connection which strengthens it. And then Hishtavet, and the Baal Shem Tov says the next stage for the teacher to prepare is the state of Hishtavet. Hishtavet means that when you go to speak, then what you're doing is you're committing, he says, that when I'm speaking this class, I'm not actually speaking to you, I'm speaking to Hashem. That all the words coming out of my mouth are speaking to Hashem. Now, why do you have to do that? Because he's going to teach you a way, we're going to learn together a way. Whether you can do this or not is irrelevant. I want you to know this is possible to do it. I want you to know that great teachers do this. And I want you to know it's brought down in our Svarim HaKadoshim. So one of the key factors to make this work, when I'm going to teach you tonight how to invest words with a very spiritually potent consciousness, is that you can't care what people are saying about you. He says you have to say, if they love the class or they don't love the class, I absolutely don't care. Because the second you care, that caring is going to knock you out of the consciousness. Well, I'm saying something deep and I'm channeling, I'm connected. Wow, that girl laughed and smiled. She must really like the class. Great, I'm a very popular teacher. Now at that moment, you are knocked out of the Devekus into Yeshus. You're knocked out of higher self, higher channeling into lower animal consciousness. So part of this and before I get into the techniques and what we're building, I just want to let you know that part of it is this concept of hishtavut, which means equanimity, which is always the classic thing that the Kabbalists speak down of how do you know when you're ready to learn Kabbalah. Learning Kabbalah doesn't mean learning Eitz Chaim or learning Oitzritz or learning one of the Rabbi Sutton's wonderful books of Inner Space, Introduction to Kabbalah. It means the learning his bodedus. When the mit bodedim, when the people who wanted to enter into the world that we're learning about went to the Kabbalists, as it says in Shavei Kedusha, the Svarim, I want to learn to enter into high levels of consciousness. The first level you need is hishtavus. The first level you need is equanimity. That means that there's no difference to you whether the person loves what you're saying or hates what you're saying. This is one of the reasons when I'm working on this, you see I close my eyes a lot in class because I'm trying to disconnect. I'm not saying I'm one of these people that can do this stuff. I'm just saying that you have to know, you have to work on things. Doesn't mean you can't make eye contact, but when you're making eye contact, you're pulling in a deeper place. That's the theory anyway. You try and you practice. Islam does. You explore, you test, you try. You see what you learn. Now, listen very carefully. We began with a lot of Torahs last time from the Kutei Eitzes, and we talked about all these Ekdamas. Dibur she'eno nishma v'neskabel eno nikra dibur klal. That when you're giving Musa, when you're giving over to someone, you're telling them, all of education is Musa, all of education is rebuke. Now, that's not a very popular, nice thing to say, but basically, any true education is supposed to be massively opening your mind and massively transformational compared to what you were up to before you heard it. It's not just supposed to be, here's a piece of information, you go, oh, that's very nice, thank you very much. It's supposed to be something that's transformative. Transformative means that you're leaving behind something that you thought before, something you connected to before. It's supposed to open you up. And that's hard, and we're all holding on desperately to how we are. We all want to change, but as long as we don't have to let go of anything before, acknowledge anything that was wrong or limited or finite or, So you're really giving someone something very challenging. You're giving them something which is to some degree they don't want to hear. So you have to be in a very deep place to pull this off and do this. And Rav Nachman says, the thing we're looking for is dibur b'chias, is speech with energy, that we said words are vessels that you invest in consciousness. Hadibur hu klei shefa shebehen mekablim shefa. Words aren't just information, they're vibrational frequencies which contain an energetic resonance that the speaker is channeling down from above. And he says, when the person does not hear it, it's because when the receiver does not hear it means affect it, change it, believe in it, understand it, accept it, even though it's difficult, even though I'm angry because of what they're saying, but somehow my heart is open and it goes in. If the person doesn't do it, it's because it wasn't real speech. Real speech is being Megala the Shechina. Real speech is creating a resonance, a vessel, a vibrational frequency which has riding on it, riding through it, divine consciousness, because the speaker entered into divine consciousness before they began to speak. This is what Rav Nachman even says on his section of Tefillah. Ika ma she'en miskablim ha'tefillas hi mechames she'en lahadavarim chen. When your prayers aren't received, when Hashem doesn't answer your prayers, it's because your words of prayer did not have chen. Chen means grace. That's something very deep. I'm not sure putting this together. Hashem doesn't listen to you speak unless you speak with soul. You think you're boring everyone else. You think no one else is listening to you. Hashem's also bored. He's also not listening to you. Unless you're speaking with soul, with consciousness, with Shekhinah, from Devekas. This is called Shleim is Lashon HaKodesh, that your Lashon is Kodesh. Lashon HaKodesh means, what does the Lashon HaKodesh really mean? It doesn't mean the Hebrew, because we're Jews and we speak Hebrew, and they're Greek, so they speak Greek, and they're, I don't know, Australian, they speak Australian. Lashon HaKodesh means a language that channels higher consciousness, Kedusha, Chachma, and Devekas. You understand that? It's the language that channels Kodesh. Kodesh is a kinai. Kodesh is a code word that means higher consciousness, Chachma, Koyach Ma, that which comes had an intellect. And we discussed that last week's class. And then we said, Al Yidei Shleim is Lashon HaKodesh, Dahina Al Yidei Kedusha Sediba, holiness and speak. Shemaba Ledabe Dibure Torah Tefillah Techinas Bekashas V'Sichasa Beinoi Levein Koinoi. And if a person is be careful with their mouth, you have to condition your mouth to do this. To not speak negative things about people, destructive things, to not speak lies. Lies destroys your capacity to use speech in an elevated way. And Devarim B'Talim, to say nothing with your words. Meaningless things with the words is the most destructive thing you can do. Rabbi, give me a break. Okay, I won't say negative things. But I can't shoot the breeze, is that what they call it? Why is that so destructive? Again, everyone according to their level. This should be the worst thing you ever do. Let's just be normal for a second. I'm talking people that are yearning for a little bit more energy, power, connection. What's so wrong with the Devarim B'Talim? Wasting, chewing the fat, chewing the breeze. Mixing my metaphors, aren't I? Staring down the barrel of a double-edged sword. That's what I'm doing. Yes, ma'am. If you were children all day long.
And so your speech is...
I'm not talking to the women, I'm talking to the men here. Oh, there's only women here. Done. Okay. There's a very deep answer to this. You know who else is with children all day long? Do you know who else is dealing with children all day long? Hashem. You think he wants to talk about sport? You think he wants to talk about Facebook? You think he cares whether you get fed and whether you have a nice house? These are such little things. Whether you have clothes to wear, whether your kids go to a good school. These are such little things. But he cares so much about building your soul. And he knows that all these details are what you're absorbed in. So he's going to build you in a holy, supernatural way by giving you all the little detailed things that you need to get there. And when you receive those little things, oh, we got paid this week, oh, we have a house to live in, oh, I got likes on my Facebook post, oh, we had a nice night out, a nice restaurant with friends, oh, all these little things. Hashem doesn't see those little things. He's seeing those little things because each detail he's giving you is the love, is the connection, is the magic, is the opportunity, is the blessing, is the challenge to allow you to raise you up to supernatural heights and extraordinary possibilities. When you are a mother and you actually think you're speaking small things with that child, so then you're not going to have a spiritual connection. But you're a mother and you realize that every word you speak and every banana you peel and every piece of schmutz you wipe off the floor and every your time you correct your child to do this, you're building an neshama, you're building the vessel. So those words are Kodesh Kodashim. Those words are Kodesh Kodashim. It's no difference. You hear it? What's wrong with the Vav and B'Talem? What's wrong with mundane speech? Mundane speech is the assumption, at least when we speak lies, hopefully, it's just a lie, it's a destructive thing. At least when you slander a friend, God forbid, at least you go, ugh. But the most deceptive thing at all is with words I can just say nothing. Because you think, well, that's okay then. And at that moment, we put our minds and hearts to sleep. That at this moment, something profound could have been revealed in my speech. There's not a level for everybody, but you should know there's people who dedicate their life to this, and they take on powerful, supernatural capabilities because of that. They condition themselves. Everything that is said with heart, is said with soul, is said from a higher place. And they train themselves that when I go to speak, it only comes from that place. So we're not all going to be there tomorrow. But by Thursday, you should have this down. It's interesting. It's interesting to play around with it for an hour. There's a game you can play. It's an elevation game. You set your watch to go off. And for 15 minutes each day, you express your soul through speech. That means for sure you wouldn't speak bad for 15 minutes. That means for sure you're going to do more than just speaking normal things. You're going to consciously, actively speak and express holiness. Take some practice. Now, we're still going over what we did before, and now I want to take you somewhere much deeper. We said that when a person speaks, God forbid, Lashon Hara, they get sucked in to their animal self, to their ego, to their lust, to their fear, to their anger, to their doubt, to their self-sabotaging self, the animal self, the unconscious self. And their words begin to take on that power. And we said last week that when a person speaks from a place of Kedusha, from holiness, then not only are the words powerful, not only are the words transformative, and the energy behind the words is truly transformative, it actually goes into your parts of your body that carry fear, anger, pain, and trauma, that carry tumor, and transform them. The energetic resonance of holy words has an energetic transformation even on the physical part of the body. Tzurich lasos tshuva, ad shezoich l'tshuva shalema. Al yidei shemedabrim b'hatova b'diburim me'ir loy hadibur l'chol ha'makoyim shetzarich lasos tshuva. It has an energetic transformation, a psychological transformation even in the body. And we talked about last week, and we talked about back and forward. So what we've got so far, so to speak, if you will, is building up to this idea that words can carry energy, and with that consciousness, we can facilitate that. Now, somebody asked a question last week. If our consciousness can be invested into words, and what we said is, therefore, when you raise yourself up into Dveikus, into a higher place before and as you're speaking, that means we channel down energy. So somebody asked a reasonable question was, what if a person put themselves in a bad state before they spoke? God forbid. Could that also be transferred in words? What's the answer? Yeah. So, a little cautiously, I want to learn this Torah with you before we talk again, technically, the how-to. From Likutei Maharan, Torah Mem Gimel, 43, Likutei Maharan. Lashon Rabbeinu, Zechorna Levacha. Some of the Torahs in Likutei Maharan are actually written by Rav Nachman himself, word for word. He wrote down the words. Sometimes they're passed on to his Talmidim, and they formed them and composed them. The teachings from Rav Nachman, but some of them actually come from Rav Nachman's own pen, if you will. So there's even more energy in them. So I'm a little cautious for Maven Yavin, why to give this over, but these are things we need to know about. cautious to give this over in this audience, but these are the things this audience needs to go about. B'ezrat Hashem, when other people start giving it over, I won't have to. So, you'll listen, you'll understand whatever you can. But it's interesting just to hear this as well. Da, ki hadiborim shel harasha, shehu ba da'as, moilidim niyuf b'hashamea. The words of an evil person, a destructive person, a person identified with his animal self. Now, this takes a lot of thinking about. Shehu ba das, that he's a master of consciousness. How can you be a master of consciousness and still be a messed up person? Okay, so that's a shura to unto itself. Here he's talking about the archetype of Bilam, who knew Das Elyon, who was very good at meditational techniques, who was very profoundly able to access high levels of consciousness and channel all kinds of energy, but was an incredibly destructive, self-absorbed, messed up human being. But he learned some great tricks online, gone to some great ashrams, picked up some weird self-help books and meditational books, had some Masorah. And unfortunately, I know probably a couple people like this today. I have to, but still. The words of a Rasha, who is still a master of consciousness, Molidim Niyaf B'Hashameya, they awaken the desire for sexual immorality within the person listening. Now, he's going to define what that means. Destructive energy of intimacy. And I'm going to say something a little deep here. So it's like what we think and also deeper than what we think. Just like most good Torah. When a person's das is a matter of Yiras Shamayim, then when they speak, what they speak will carry an energy of Yiras Shamayim. When the person is in a consciousness, a state of rishus, of desire, of ego, of lust, of control, of these kind of things, their das is contaminated, but they still intuitively speak from this deeper place. So the energy that their words convey will place into the listener very negative energy, which will have negative impact, God forbid. So he's going to talk this out a little. I'm going to give very general definitions in some areas and then very specific when he gets to things l'maisa. Ki zivugim nimshachem mahadas. The power of intimate connection, of masculine feminine energy, comes from das. As you may know, kamosha kasuv, v'ha'adam yoda et chava ishtoi. The Torah says, and Adam knew his wife. The biblical word for he knew her in an intimate sense is Adam knew her, right? So, and that is the word that means intimate. It means he knew her. It means he bonded with her. Das means to bond, to connect, but it means to understand. It means to have direct experience of someone. Therefore, the word of das is the word for intimate connection. Uksiv kol isha yoda'at ish. The Torah in Bamidbar, Lamed Aleph, that a woman knows a man. It's the same lashon. Now, listen very carefully, because he's expanding. It doesn't mean the energy of intimacy. He's saying something much more profound. There's two forms. There's two forms of energy, of das, of intimacy. And there's always going to be one from the side of Kedusha and one from the side of Tumah. One from the holy, positive energy of intimacy, and one is from the negative, destructive energy of intimacy. Hayinu has zivig de kedusha. There's the connection, the bond of masculine and feminine energy and holiness. Who has kashrus the tzaddikim ve'el haTorah el Hashem yisbarach. And that is not just the intimacy between man and woman, a state of purity and a state of holiness, a state of love and deep commitment and higher levels than that, but it's anything you connect to in a higher, deeper way. When you connect to great spiritual masters in their consciousness, when you connect to learning Torah with all your consciousness, with all your soul is connected, when you're connected to Hashem with all your heart and soul, when you're connected to a mitzvah, when you're connected to Avos Yisrael, that's an aspect of his kashrus, of zivug, of connection in a holy sense. V'zem nimshach mida'as de kedusha. We're going to say the litmus test you can tell of where the person's holding that you're listening to is what it awakens within you. And if you're sensitive, you see it's not just the words. It could, a person could be giving over, God forbid, chas v'chila, technically holy words, but there's something else. There's a nimshach mida'as de kedusha, v'zevugim shel avera, but there's the zivug, the connection, the dask of avera, of sin, nimshach mida'as de klippa. If the person's consciousness is bound to sin, to lust, to ego, to control, to negative energies, that causes the listener to suddenly, even if the words are interesting and the ideas are insightful, it can cause the listener, without even realizing it, to want to connect to negative things, to destructive things, to have that energy in an unholy, unchanneled, unfocused, unharnessed, unelevated way. So that's what he's saying. There's two aspects of das. V'dibur who has galus hadas. Now what is speech? Why do you have to be careful whose speech that you listen to? Because dibur is, what have we just said the whole time, or last class and this class? Dibur is a vessel that carries shefa. Dibur is a vessel that carries consciousness. The words, the speech, the vibrational frequency channels consciousness. Therefore, if the person speaking, consciousness is distorted, but they still know how to invest themselves in the words, that means the energetic field that you invest more than the information, even if the information, technically speaking, is good or wise or insightful, it's a smart psychological insight. Oh, I like what he said about, doing that or turning that on. That's great. But there's something comes through it, like a ghost in the machine, and that sways our soul in unhealthy, unbalanced, unharmonious, unelevated directions. Because a dibur who is galus das. Ki ein yodim masha b'da'as ela al yedei dibur. He lays it out. You don't know what's in a person's consciousness until they speak, right? So that means the speech is the way we express consciousness. But therefore, when the person is talking to me and the person is saying those words, I'm absorbing, they're injecting within me their consciousness through the vessel of the word. The famous line. From one night to another night, what does Yechavadas mean? Das is expressed, das is spoken. The word for Adam and Chava, why do women speak more and why do men speak less? It's not just a joke, it's a very deep thing. The word for Adam comes from the word dam. Dam means silent. Silent means unexpressed. Chava actually means, Chava actually means to speak, to express. The whole force of feminine energy, which is dibur is a feminine aspect. Remember, dibur means, what does dibur literally mean? It means to speak, and it literally means davar, a physical object. So the word midaber, mem means causative. Midaber means to cause to become a physical object, a physical expression, something tangible. So that's what a woman's energy is. A woman's energy is the manifesting force. She takes the seed and she creates a dimensional expression of an infinitesimally small seed, and she creates a space, a womb, a place, a house, a home, to take ideas, to take children and expand them, express them. She brings potential into reality. So Yechavadas, says Rav Nachman, is the whole idea is to express, to speak out. Das, because that means the words give expression to the speech. Yechava meloshen dibur, he says. Shahad dibur medaber masha b'das. The words express what is in the consciousness. And if you understand that, when the Rasha speaks, there's breath coming out of his mouth. Now he's talking physical breath, but he's talking energetic breath. And that breath coming out of his mouth is moilid avirim asiyim. It literally means he's creating bad vibes. Poisonous energy is created around him to those that listen. Shel niyaf. It either chas v'chalila awakens negative sexual energy, or it awakens the desire to connect to things in an unhealthy way, an unholy way, a way that's connected to the Ratzon Hashem. And the person listening to him that's inhaling that energy, that's breathing in those words, is breathing that energy, and that they draw into the body these negative energies. So if you understand what he's saying there, not only is it a nice, holy thing to speak from a higher place. Know that if you're not speaking from a higher place, there's a good chance that you're investing negativity into words, into speech. There's so much of what we say. There's so much of what when we speak, what we need to say to our husbands, to our wives, to our children. You have to give that child, you have to tell them that what he's doing is wrong, and you try and say it in the best way, and the child explodes. You try and say it to your husband explodes, you say it to your wife explodes. It's not about taking 100% responsibility. We all have to take responsibility. There's the giver and the receiver, etc. But all our words in our family, in our friends, in our job, in our work, professionally, your consciousness, your speech, the reason you exist is to express your soul. And every interaction with a person can lift them up or drag them down. Again, take the beauty of what I'm saying. Take the opportunity of what I'm saying. Don't say, oh my gosh, every day I'm a disaster because I don't do this. Don't take the guilt of it, okay? Don't take the guilt of it. Say as in an aspiring way, as aspiration. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Reach up to it. Don't be dragged down by it. Yes?
So what if we have like a close family member, like a parent, or we find ourselves in a social situation that we can't escape, and there's all this negativity coming at us in words? What should we do about that?
Be very, very careful.
How?
At Neve, we always had a rule. General questions get general answers. Rabbi, what if I'm around someone with bad words? Then be careful of those bad words. Obviously, you're not asking a general question. My guess is this happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm anticipating something that's coming up.
Right, right.
And I just know I'm going to be surrounded, by all these people that are going to be talking all this negativity.
So then you have to prepare well. And you have to, again, general questions get general answers. And we have to know where you're going and why you're going, and do you need to hear it, and how do you create fences. But people, and especially women have to learn how to create appropriate boundaries when need be. It's not easy for people, it's not easy for women especially. Appropriate boundaries.
So is it possible to engage in conversation but not absorb the negativity of the word?
It is, but it's a very high level. You have to know how to work on it. You have to keep yourself in a state of devacus, and most people aren't holding there. So you have to keep yourself, you have to know how to be first you have to know if you have to be in that conversation. Second of all, you have to know how to steer a conversation in another direction. Third of all, if at gunpoint you have to sit there and it's highly negative, you have to know that by the tzaddikim and the holy works, they call das, sometimes they call it yadayim, hands. Your consciousness is called a hand. What's the connection? The tzaddikim sometimes say, the Soma Kadeshim say, that we have to develop our hands, our capacity to receive Musa. What does it mean to receive Musa with our hands? Rebuke. That means you're all doing a bunch of messed up things, and someone needs to basically tell you what you're doing is messed up, right? It's true. You are doing a bunch of messed up things. How do I know? Because us human beings are constantly doing messed up things. And we're so absorbed in our own mind, we don't acknowledge that they're messed up things. Chazal teaches that people always, the Piyazesna talks about this, we always justify and rationalize. It's called the moahed to everything we do. So we're unaware. So we need someone to tell us. But we don't have the capacity to receive Musa. When someone tells you what you're doing, do you say, thank you so much, that's so beautiful, and I have an opportunity to change? We crash, we panic, we blame them, we blame someone else, we cut ourselves up for them, we never speak to them again. They're messed up, they have to. We don't have the hands, we can't receive it. So the tzaddikim are saying that consciousness is like a hand. If you don't have the capacity to receive it, to hold it, to gain from it, to benefit from it, to transform from it, then you can never change. So it's interesting that consciousness is referred to as hands, because consciousness has the capacity to grasp and hold on, and consciousness has the capacity to push away. So you should know that it's possible to be in a conversation and someone's saying not good things, not holding things around in front of you, and you don't absorb it at all. But it's got to do with where you put your attention. Where your attention is what you absorb. And the more your attention is on something, the more intensely you absorb its energy. That's why when you focus on something with av and yira, with love and fear, of awe, when you have awe towards that thing, we were discussing that 2 classes ago, awe towards the Rebbe, the tzaddik, the Rebbitzin that you're going to, and you're like, wow, oh my gosh, then you're so intensely fixed, the Zohar says that, then what happens? You absorb their energy even more. When you go into the Vegas, you think how awesome Hashem is, and more awe, and more love, and more awe, then you're massively channeling all that light. When you're fixed, someone says, I have some Lashon Hara to tell you, and you say, they go, yeah, tell me all about it. Poison, poison, poison. And when they're talking to you, and in your mind, you're just like distracting yourself, and you're thinking so on, and you're singing a song, and you can learn to do lots of interesting tricks. You only absorb what your attention is. Your mind, your das, is like hands. You can open up your hand and say, give it to me. You can also slap it out of you and away from you energetically when it comes. So again, I'm still giving you a general answer, but it's something to think about. One more question for now.
I just want to add something that I've been trying in recent times, which is when I hear something, Lashon Hara, I hear something, anything that makes me feel distressed, I try to go immediately into a blessing mode. I just send a blessing out towards that person.
Right.
Like really strong blessing, really strong compassion, really strong love, and whatever is in me that can help to elevate them, like Rabbi Nachman's Rish Pebet, like whatever in me is able on my level to elevate them, I send out to them.
Yeah, El's paraphrasing the famous Chazal, which is sometimes the best defense is an offense. Right? So it's a deep thing. That's what I'm saying.
It's a shield for me.
Rather than shielding as an, oh my God, I don't want to hear, oh my God, proactively focus on something good. Look, that person must be in a lot of pain to say that. Well, I send them light and blessing. Right? And you're fixing your mind on good. That's how Tzaddik can make it through the physical world.
And maybe you really help them. Maybe you really can elevate them by doing that.
It's interesting. Islam does. Try it. See what happens. Maybe it works for you. Maybe it doesn't. If it works, keep it up. If it doesn't work, go for another trick. Listen very carefully. Let's talk about the practical technique. It's a very beautiful Torah. I was very excited when I saw this. I was excited because it's profound to see these things in Hasidic teachings and Torah teachings. B is excited because I've done this for years, so I felt very validated. And C is I'm excited because sometimes you do things and you don't really know what you're doing. And then you read exactly what, and you go, it's not just validated, because now you can do it better, now you can teach it to others. I had to read this Torah many, many times before I understood on a practical level, because it's written in a very kind of curt way. I want to share it with you now. Now, if you want to learn how to do this, as I've said before, this is not a class. An elevation will do practical, break it down step by step, what it is, how to make it work, right? So there's much more you need to know. But I'm just going to bring down the core teaching in one of the ways that the Baal Shem Tov brings it down, okay? Now, he's assuming you know what Yeshiva Das is, you know how to calm and still your mind. He's assuming you know what the Vekas is. The Vekas is a technique you learn when you feel Hashem's light and love flow through you, and you open your heart to that. He's assuming you know how to do that. He's assuming that you've connected to a higher place. He's assuming that you've connected to the people that you're teaching, being Mishpiran, whether they're in the room, whether they're beyond the room. He's assuming that you're connecting them up. He's assuming that you've decided, as I've said previously, he says in the Torah before, the Lashon is, V'yachashuv sha'enu oime eila hadiburim rak lifnei habori yisbarach shamoy. That you're speaking only not to them, not to the girls, not to the guys, not to the rabbis, not to the fire yidden, not to anyone else out there. You're only speaking to Hashem. Your focus and intent is only on Hashem. I just want to give Hashem nachas ruach with these deep ideas, with this blessing, with this insight, this rebuke I have to give someone with this teaching. I just want to know Hashem, to know my attention is on Hashem. I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to them. Shema nafkamina b'shvachai mishabach oisi or b'ganusa im yagana oisi. What difference does it make if you love my class or hate my class? You love my Torah, because every time I go, he liked it, he doesn't like it. I'm yanked back into my animal. I'm yanked back into my fear or my ego. So you're now trying to transcend that, because if you are in your fear and ego, then what are you going to be giving over to them energetically? Fear and ego. But if you are in Hayek and Ava and Yira and Devekas and Teferes and Atzilus and you're channeling that, then that's what's coming through. That's what's coming in. So this is a Torah. It's brought down in Baal Shem Tov. Daf Chof Bet Amid Bet. So it's assuming that you know all of these things and other things as well. But here he breaks it down in a very simple way. He begins with a pasuk from Tehillim. Kaf Gimel Chaf. 103, capital 103 in Psalms. The line is number 20, pasuk 20. And the line says very simply, Baruch Hu Hashem. Maybe someone can put that person out of the misery at the door and get that. Baruch Hu Hashem Malachav. Geborei koyach oisei devaroi. I love this Torah. I get very excited thinking about it and sharing it with you all. Baruch Hu Hashem. Blessed is Hashem, or bless Hashem. Blessed be Hashem. Malachav. Baruch Hu Hashem Malachav. Hashem's angels will bless him. Now remember, bless means shvach v'hada'ah. Bless means to give praise and gratitude to Hashem, right? But blessing always means riboy v'tesefta. Blessing means to draw down energy. Okay? When we acknowledge Hashem, when we praise Hashem, when we thank Hashem, we're locking our consciousness into Him, and we begin to channel that down. Baruch Hu Hashem Malachav. So an angel, a malach, is doing that. Giborei koyach, those who have this incredibly potent, strong power. Oisei devaroi, that they do his will, they do what he says. Now, the Baal Shem Tov is going to pick up on this term, oisei devaroi, devaroi. It literally means they do his words. Pshat is, the angels do what Hashem commands. And while we're talking about angels, of course, we're talking about tzaddikim, because they're like an angel. When we're talking about tzaddikim, we're talking amech kulam tzaddikim. All of us are our aspect, on a good day, let's say, to be like an angel, perfect in our avoda, with our head, heart, and soul. The nishmas kol chai, every part of our being is given over. So, therefore, we are Baruch Hu Hashem, we draw down Hashem consciousness when we're in this state of being a malach. We become geborei koyach, we have a great power. And what's the great power that we have? Cheva oisei devaroi. Not that we just do his speech, but oisei devaroi means that we turn speech into physical property. Oisei means asiya, means physicality. Devaroi is the level of Yetzirah. Dibor is the level of above. That means our words have a physical effect. That's everything we've been talking about so far, right? Who are these malachim? What is this incredible power they have? How do they draw down the energy? By taking Hashem's word. Hashem's word is also a code term for the Shekhinah. It's a code term for the Malchus of the world of Atzilus. It's a code word for the higher consciousness of Devekas, of Chokhmah. And you know the term abracadabra? We all know this Torah, right? I'm going to make a rabbit appear out of thin air. Abracadabra. Rabbit appears out. How did you do that? Everyone knows abra means abara. I will create kadabra, like my words. What's the implication? That your words themselves create physically, energetically, that which you speak. So this is the idea of why tzaddikim can do this. It's because they master their speech. So Baal Shem Tov says, how does it work? Now, this is very, very pashut. Shetzurich pirush. So this is how it works. Shetzarich ha'adam v'hiyos b'medrega zu. that it needs to be, a person needs to cultivate this capability. Shahadibo yiloi asiya, that his speech will have a physical effect. Not just his words are counted as action, not just his words motivate people into action, but the word itself, the consciousness in the world, causes to come about. That's when the child doesn't feel love, and you tell the child, you're wonderful and you're fine and fantastic. The child's like, no, I am not worthy of love. But suddenly, just by saying it, the child feels an experience of love. How do you do this? Now, this is the technical thing. Kishaba el hadibor, when a person comes to speak, the person has to tell their child something, has to tell the husband something, has to get through, has to make an impact. You're giving a class. You're going to pray. You need that chen to the class. You need that chen to Hashem. Tzrich leilech derech zayin medregas. You need to go through 7 levels, 7 filters. Now, the 7 levels and the 7 filters is something called sfirat. It's called the midat. It's called zun. Hands up if you learned stuff about the sfirat before. Hands up if you know something about it. Hands up if you don't really know much about that. Fine. You should get out more. Here's the 10-second ridiculous introduction to sfirat. All of reality, in any system, reality has 10 levels. Every creation process, the structure of the spiritual world, the structure of our body, every organization and startup, every concept has 10 levels. And the 10 levels are the infrastructure of revelation, the steps that something has to go through from being non-created, conceived, willed into action, and created down to a tangible form. And basically, if you will, it's ridiculous to do this, the first 3 levels are called moichen. The conception of an idea, the intellectual analysis of the idea, and then the finally coming to understand it in a deep intrinsic way. And then the 7 levels that follow are coming from the abstract concept stage into full expression. And the first 3 levels of that, if you will, so now the next 3 is the emotional of love and fear and passion and connection and integration of love and fear. And then there's the next thing called nahi, netzach hoid and yasoid, which is then the physically beginning to march it out into the world. And sometimes you have to be dominant, and sometimes you have to be passive, and then you have to find the balance of that for the giver and the receiver. And then finally, there's the revelation, the thing that was conceived as a concept, broken down intellectually, understood deeply, become passionate about, come to bring it to full expression. And finally is the final revelation. Hands up if you're still with me. Great. So that was a ridiculously oversimplified definition of the secret of all of reality and the meaning of life. So all of Kabbalah is a study of Sfirat. That's the whole thing. And everything in reality is made of that. Now, what he's going to say is the following thing. When a person needs to invest consciousness in speech, this is how the process goes. Techila tzurich liyos bebina lechashuv eich ledaber. The first thing you need to do, assuming you're in the Vekas and assuming you've connected them to the Vekas and found the Gezei V'Shava, found the point of connection, you're ready to do that. What's the first thing you need to do when you're going to speak? This is very Kabbalistic. You'll never get this. What's that? Open your mouth. It's probably before that. Think of. You have to have something to say. Only if you're Kabbalist you'll get that. It's too way above all your simple minds. Right? The first thing you have to do is break down what it is you want to think. And that's a process of being, and that's intellectual stage. That's before the 7. And I told you what the Tzaddik Rav Rimple told me is that even if you don't plan out everything that you're going to say, just to get your mind opening up the channels of the information, starts bringing it down in the spiritual world. Now, so first you have to map out approximately what you're going to say. And as I've told you previously, the best speakers map out in depth what they're going to say, but when they get hit by that light, they throw away the script and they channel it. And this is the map what he's going to teach you right now. You'll see this explicitly on the inside. Now, once you know what you're going to say, and you know the order and you structure it, va'achakach now becomes the 7 levels. You ready? And he's assuming you know what Dveikus is. He's assuming you're there already. The next thing you do is you now need to you have to bring it down to the heart. Now you're going to start manifesting to the 7 levels. You have to get into a state of love and fear. That means you feel love. That means the first thing you're doing is detaching your emotional state from being externally defined. Who's in the room, who came, who didn't, what time is it, have to be done by this time, or that person's there, they don't like me, I have to spend time with them, I have to, yada, yada. So you're pulling yourself out of the rush, and you're defining your emotions, you're elevating your emotions to be resonating with your soul and resonating with Hashem. So you have to feel that openness, that connection, that love. And you have to feel a little awe, because what you're going to do is down channel something from above. And to channel from above, to draw down blessing, Baruch Hu Hashem, right, you need to fix your attention with emotion, with passion, with love and awe on above. So therefore you're starting to shift your emotional focus, not on the time in the class. You know, I hate teachings on these birthright trips. The rabbis start teaching the class, by the way, we have 15 minutes less because we have to take them to paintballing the second. So could you speed this up, as fast as you can? And you're already sucked out of the present moment, right? So you have to then enter a state of love and awe from above and your soul, and that's through the Torah, the information that you want to say, and how much you care for these people, because you're, as we said before, you're praying for them, and you're connecting not to the people in the class, but their souls. And the same way you can have to connect to a tree, and the same way you connect to a rock, you can just tune your mind into feel, to sense the group, where they are, where they're up to, and you're already channeling love and connections. You're feeling this love and fear and awe and passion and light, especially the light that's shining through the words, the ideas of what you're ready to speak. And when you're in that state, so this is very interesting. Now, the third level, the first is love, the second is fear and awe, and the third level of the Sefirot is Tiferes. Tiferes has many definitions, and one of the definitions of Tiferes is beauty. And another one is harmony. It's a harmony between love and fear. But it's something on itself. The mystics say that it's come from the Kava MCE, and what that means a little deep for right now is even though love is love and fear is fear and awe is awe, Tiferes is a beauty, but because it combines the two, I'm going to say this out loud. For those that get this, that don't, if you don't get this, you don't have to worry about it. It's in the middle place. It has to be in a middle place to combine both. And if it's a middle place, it can channel from a deeper place in love and fear. It comes from something higher as well. To bring two things together, you must be greater than just those two parts. To hold place for someone or something or contradiction, you have to be pulling on from a greater, deeper place than just that. This sense of Tiferes is actually a word that means beautiful. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this before. If you speak in public, you've ever had to speak at a graduation, a presentation, a devato, at a table. I've had this for years and I really struggle with it. I have this class and it starts like this, and there's a story and engages them, and then there's this clever line, and we ask a kasha here from the Gemara, we ask a kasha from the Chumash, and we bring that together every time, and a beautiful, clever thing, there's a funny joke over there, and you go like this, and you've got it mapped out, you're pretty sure what you're going to say. Of course, the reality is if it's a great share, you'll drop all of that and go for something deeper, but you'll suddenly catalyze all of that as well. You know that feeling? But there's something else, which is, when I begin, where am I going to start? Those first few words of a class are so precious, they're so deep. And when am I going to begin? And the worst place to begin is exactly the place that you wrote in your script is where you should begin. I'm going to tell the story about the guy that walked down the street and fell in the banana peel. There was a guy that was walking down the street and he fell in a banana peel. Now you're asleep the second I say that. You're gone. You're disconnected. Here I am following the script. So where do you start? Now this is what he says. When you go into the Vekas and then you think about what they did and you plan out the class and then you have love and awe, you're connecting to the souls of the people, you're connecting to Hashem, you're lit up by the passion and the awe of that Torah, that's a place you can get to. It's not as hard as you think. Good. His paras. What does that mean? Kishahu ratzeh shetihiyah teva shlema az nitztafim oisius va'az mitpa'arim be'enav ledabram kach. I sit there in class, and all this stuff is spinning in my head. And I can have this idea, I should start with, there's that idea, am I going to bring that to her? I'm going to say hello to everybody, maybe I'll just ignore them and begin. And you know what you say first? You say nothing. And you wait. And there's always a moment when you just comes. Do you know that feeling? Hands up if you know what I mean from your own experience in speaking, right? And you're suddenly compelled. This is the way forward. And when it comes to you, it's a barak hamavrik. It's a flash of light. And I this is weird. Again, if you know what this means from the experience, then you know what this means. Everyone else will probably just going, what are you talking about? But I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to Hashem anyway, so what do I care? So the idea is, when it comes to you, I don't even know where it's going. I don't even know what it is, but I can feel, here it comes. And when I go out with that, I'm watching it, and I'm going, oh, that's clever. Oh, that opened. That's a great, oh, it twists. And suddenly it starts weaving together all this stuff. Now listen how the Baal Shem Tov talks about it. After the love and the fear and the devekas and the being and the information, derech his paras, the path of teferes, kishehu loitze shetiyah teva shlema, as nitztafim ha'oisius, all the ideas, they're random information in your head. Oh, there's that Torah, I'm going to start with that, when am I going to get them? But they haven't formed into something. They haven't congealed. And there's nothing compelling. And there's a sense that something becomes beautiful and compelling, and I have to go with that. Wait. And then when you get that, then's the third midah of the three. Ava, Gevurat, Yira. The third is Teferes. And the fourth, what's the fourth midah? Does anyone know? No, before Hod comes? Netzach. Netzach means to dominate. It means to push forward and push out at all cost. Shemenetzeach ha'oisius ha'acharim ha'rotzin letzeitz benanua ha'motzi'ois menetzeach ha'sam. Then you take that feeling, because that feeling is not the automated robotic thing that you plan to say. The beginning of your Devar Torah is now being channeled in, and you have to have the bittul to release to that and receive and channel forward. And this is what he says, therefore, when the Nanua HaMatza'at, when it begins to move forward, you ignore everything else you planned. No, wait, that's not good. That's not the plan I do. I was going to start with a story. And this dominates, and you thrust it forward. What you've done is, you've used your mind to prepare a structure. And then you put yourself in a higher connection. And you've said, rather than giving over the robotic script that I usually give with the joke, with the quasha, with the teretz, right? Rather than giving over my usual line that I say when I'm starting to speak to a group, because I've created information in my head and I'm emotionally connected to that information, now I clear my mind. I feel it moving around. And I wait for the Shekhinah to drop in. And when it throws me a line, I grab hold of that. And when it pushes forward, when I ride that out, it disperses everything on either side. Right? It dominates, you allow it to dominate, and you have confidence in it to push everything away and just ride that wave. You know, you see, I saw this video recently. I love crazy creative geniuses and seeing what they do. This guy was doing freestyle rap. How brilliant do you have to be to do freestyle rap? So like all freestyle, like even, do you know, what's it called, the theater where you improvisational theater? What's it called, the theater where you improvise? It's technical improvisational theater. Do you know improvisers in professional improvisers, they actually practice, they rehearse? How do you practice improvisation? Because you get a relationship and you have certain jokes you can go. But the greatest moments when you're in those moments when it's just something channeling through. So you understand rhythms and you understand structure and you have certain words that you've used together before. But when it comes to you. And the vessel that you created, the knowledge that you have, the associations you've made, the Devar Torah, I have to leave it up in your head. That's all there. It's sitting there. Like the Klal Yisrael built the elements of the Mishkan. They built the temple, but they couldn't stand it up. They kept standing on it and fall down. And only Moshe represents Das Elyon. Moshe could come in and he could take all the elements and he could catalyze them. And suddenly, not only they stood, suddenly it channeled down something from above. That was Shekhinah. You understand? That was Shekhinah. That was the energy. So he says, at that moment, if you just give over the information in your head, it's a very nice class with no energy, with no consciousness. But if you use all that information there, and then you wait for that light to come in, all those ideas you're swimming in your head, Rabbas Machshavas Belev Ishva Atzas Hashem Hisakum. There's all these ideas, all these thoughts. I can start like this and go with this. But then you wait for the light, and then it's Minetzeach. Then it comes through. Minetzeach Oisam V'Daba Hadavat Tzurichloi. That thing that you're compelled to speak, that's the thing you shine through. V'Achakach Tzurichloi. is derech hoid. Then you need the next, after netzach comes hoid. What's hoid? Submission. That's the capacity to throw away your script. That's the capacity to say all those other, no, I had to say this, no, I want to say, no, let it go, push it down, release it. Don't worry, something deeper is coming through. Now I'm channeling, now I'm trusting, now I'm opening up. I go, and after comes derech yasoid. Dahinu machshava sodavik lidiburo hu nikra soid. When my thoughts, soid is another word for das. Soid is another word for intimate connection, the bonding of masculine and feminine energy. When my consciousness is connected to my speech, I'm not thinking about the people in the room. I'm not thinking about all the devatos in my head. I'm just flowing in clear state, channeling that down. Diburo hu nikra soid. Shehu devekes machshava be'dibur. There's just a channeling. There's nothing else in my mind. Sometimes you're giving Torah in a class and you hear this information coming through. Havdil elf havdalas. I once heard Woody Allen in an interview say, the funniest jokes I make, I hear them for the first time when they're coming out of my own mouth. And I used that was very profound. He's quoting the Baal Shem Tov. It's a mefurish raya, Woody Allen, the Baal Shem Tov. Who nikra soichu, who devekas and machshava b'dibor, that his consciousness is not thinking up something funny to say. It's just focused on that energy coming through, the dibor of the Shekhinah, the expression of the Shekhinah, right? And he says, as he does, v'achakach bar derech hapeh v'hu malchus. And what's malchus? It's the words coming out. And what's malchus? It's the words making contact with the heart of the receiver. And what's malchus? The three levels of malchus. It's the heart transformation of the heart through the power of the words, because the speaker is just tuned into something above, and they're not even conscious. Because if they're thinking about what they're saying, how clever it is, what should be the next thing, what is the order? No, what's the kasha? What's the teretz? What's the structure? I want to impress that person. I don't want to put off that person. I hope that person likes my class. I hope the person doesn't hate my class. All of that is going on. They're distracted, but there's nothing they're thinking, because your consciousness is just up in the Shekhinah and it's coming down and it's coming through. And that's the channeling, and that's how it's done. והוא המדרגה התחתונה, וצריך אדם להיות מדרגה זו, שהיא דיבור נחשב לוי למעשה. And then it happens to be that your speech has the power to cause effect. Because if you listen very deeply, your preparation for the class was not what you're going to say. The preparation for the class is to awaken the ideas, the details. And then you surrender to the Shekhinah, to the Vekas. And then you surrender that Hashem should catalyze that thought. And then you surrender that it should be channeled in and channeled down, and it goes and it goes and it goes. And when you get yourself out of the way, there's only light left to be expressed through the words. But the more you think about the words, the more the words only contain you. But more you release yourself to the energy, there is no you to contaminate the words. And your consciousness and the consciousness of the Shekhinah, Shekhinah medeberes mitoich grona shemoichsha, that Moshe Rabbeinu, the aspect of Das, the Shekhinah spoke through him. Does that make sense, what we're saying?
Yeah.
Questions? Is this interesting to anyone?
Mm-hmm.
No questions? Anyone got questions online? Yes.
It's not actually a question, it's more maybe comment.
Comments?
But, like, if this is so, why is it that there is kind of a style in each teacher? Like, there's people who may attend to class and just don't like it, or not receive it
Mm-hmm.
because of the style of the class. You know what I mean?
Well, there's different concepts of styles. There's styles of Das Tachton and styles of Das Elyon. There's a style as most teachers in the world, they teach information. Some teachers teach charisma. Some teachers have information and charisma. But that's all Das Tachton. They know how to structure something, they know how to tell a story, they know how to be funny or cool or deep or sensitive. They they structure information. Some of them have interesting information to say. Some of them don't have interesting information. Some of them have interesting information but can't structure it in a way that you can understand it. Some of them are very good at structuring things, right? These are all the normative, forgive me for saying, animalistic mechanisms of teaching. If they're smart and they study good things and have a good sense for what interests people and they're good at structuring a class and they understand what's relevant and how to connect to an audience, they can give over something, that's fine. They're giving over their self, and their self may be reasonable, intelligent, insightful, valuable, helpful, funny, may make you cry at the end with a nice story. Great. So that's fine. And therefore, if a person doesn't speak to the things that interest you, they'll be more boring. If a person says interesting things, but they don't speak with a heart, and you're a heartfelt person, you may not connect to it. A person's telling about something fascinating, but it's not my subject, or not my struggle, or not my... Right, that's fine. Then there's a whole different thing. When a person speaks soul, more people will connect to it. But still, Mashali b'chafetz, the Gemara teaches the person needs to learn what their heart desires to learn. And the heart there means Das Elyon. You have a unique personality, and your unique personality resonates with a particular kind of Torah. Sometimes there's a great spiritual master that you can say they're fantastic, but they're not my style, they're not my flavor, they're not what resonates to me. Sometimes it's very difficult. You can be part of a wonderful yeshiva, wonderful community, and you say that person's really, an Adam Gadol, they're a great person, but it doesn't do it for me. And that person could be giving over from a very deep place. It's just their shorish neshama is not aligned with your tikkun. So it's very important in that sense. We're talking above information now. It's very important in that sense that you find teachers who, not to speak the information you need, that's for sure true, and not to speak in a way that's clear enough that you can understand so you can grow, that's for sure true, but now a deeper level. You have teachers that you can go to that they speak soul to you, and the soul that they speak. What do we say? The pshat was there. It's not just a speaking spirit, but they are speaking and being megala spirit. It's the spirit that's shaykh to your neshama. That means, as the mystics would say, to some degree, a greater lesser degree, that what they are saying, that your soul actually comes from their soul. That your soul is a spark of their soul. The neshama is like this. There's Rabbanim that I know, Rabbits that I know, that when they speak, they connect to more people. It's called neshama klali. It's not because of the information. It's because they resonate so deeply with who you are, because you're to some degree part of them. Soul trees, soul families, all interconnected. And sometimes you don't even understand, but they said, somehow that's it. Somehow that resonates with me. Because the teacher, I remember years ago that I couldn't understand a word he said in Hebrew, but I just wanted to be in the room when he was speaking. Because I know I'm connected to that kind of thing. And therefore something else is being given over. That's an important part of Judaism. That's an important part of our growth. Forgive me for saying I don't want to offend anyone. Just because you're brought up with a community, with a very chashivav, it doesn't mean it's going to do it for you. But he's a tzaddik, but he's an Adam Gadol, but he's a Talmid Chacham. That's gavaldik. But there's Shivim Panim LaTorah. And he may not be your Talmid Chacham. He may not be your Adam Gadol. He may not be your tzaddik. He may not be a tzaddik actually. Just because he's a Rav Gila doesn't mean he's a tzaddik. But he could be a tzaddik and he may not be your tzaddik. And we suppress our desire to connect to deeper Torah by keeping ourselves. We feel that I can't leave, I can't change. I went to yeshiva, I was makav to a certain yeshiva, they made me from, okay, I'm quite connected, but it's good enough, it's nice. But that tzaddik does with me, I was told him calm on that tzaddik stuff. Okay, fine, so I'll just crunch up my heart, crunch up my soul and stand there. But when I hear that, get back in the box. Where you are, don't be afraid to wander far and wide, the Siddiqim say, to find that which speaks to you, that which talks to you. Not just here, but here. Not just here. When I say here, I don't mean emotion. Emotion's easy, it comes and goes, it's high and low. There's plenty of things on Facebook to feel passionate about or upset about. I'm talking here that goes to here. Shorish neshama. When someone speaks from soul, that's shaykh to your shorish neshama. There's nothing greater in the whole of the world. That's how we're davik to that. We're davik to that through that. You understand what they're channeling down in words is the Shekhinah, and that's the Shekhinah that's shaykh to you. That's a way to connect to Hashem in one of the deepest ways. Torah is a meditation. Learning Torah is a meditation because through the words we connect to the soul, and through the soul we connect to the divine soul of all worlds, the Nishmas, Kol Chai. But to be able to do that, the teacher has to channel from that place, and the student has to see through the words, feel through the words, not to the poison words and the poisonous energy, but to the holy words and the holy energy. If you're an educator, I want you to play with some of that. If you're a mother, I want you to play with some of that. If you're an employer, I want you to play with some of that. Choose something you need to say to someone. Class, your coach, your therapist, your mother. Map out what are you going to say. Still your mind before the conversation. Connect to Hashem. Whatever that means to you. Gezerah Shava, resonant bonding. Connect. Think of that soul, what you love, what you do about them, till you feel that energy connection. Lift them. Choose that they be lifted up. Right to the Kamana, connect to the animals, the domain, Sameach, Chai, Medaba. We'll do that in elevation sometime, you'll get it, then you'll be able to do it, Bezrat Hashem. But then, wait for the words to come. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, but how to begin, how to touch that soul. You daven, you connect, and you wait, and all the ideas, or the oisius are swimming around, but you don't yet have a teva. A teva means a word. The Baal Shem Tov said it also means a vessel, a boat, and there's something, the soul will ride through it. And when it comes, then it comes, right? That's the hisparis, you feel it. No, now I have to start with this. And then, no, but I was going to do this. But as the movement goes, push it aside. Focus on that. That's the hoid goes, everything else goes down. Right? And the yesod is, I'm just connected to that and let it come from your heart. And you feel it, feel the light. It feels open. It feels connected. You know it's going in when it's coming through you already, because when you are connected, it will connect them to it somehow. Play with it. Thank you for your time.